Eddie, even though your ideal is laudable in different ways, we can't do it. Church law doesn't allow us to stay behind and fight because it's right in canon law, and almost no lay people know this because they don't talk about it. Catholics are not allowed to associate with heretics. That means we can't stay behind and remain in these Novus Ordo churches. They're heretics. They're wrong. They're theologically incorrect, to be nice about it. Okay? We can't stay behind and pray with these heretics because church law doesn't allow it. I mean, if you took that, and I'm trying to be kind to you, if you took that, that means we could go to the Protestant churches and fight among them, trying to influence them. You can't go to the Protestant church. These modern Catholics are Protestants. They don't realize it. That's how ignorant they are. That's why, as a clergyman, our community, our Franciscan community, this is why we have had to physically separate ourselves from these other Catholics. This is why in Lubbock, I'll use myself as an example, why I can't go to these local churches. They're not going to let me in, and it's mutual. I don't want to go in. I can't say this Mass that I say in these other churches. One, because the churches have been desecrated, and they, physically speaking, they're not set up for me to say a Latin Mass. The local bishop is not going to allow me in, okay, because they're no longer Catholic. That's why we've had to physically remove ourselves from these churches. I'm glad you brought it up because I haven't talked about this in some time. That's why we've had to walk away. You know, I think that your desire to fight is good. It's laudable. You know, but and I say we, my former bishop, Bishop Louis Vizalis, who has now been dead for about 10 years, over 10 years, he figured it out for himself. And let me give you a little bit of his background for our listeners' sake. He was a Franciscan. He was ordained in 1956. And he functioned as a Franciscan priest through the years, even 18 years in Korea. Came back in 1975, and he began to read about what was taking place in the church. He didn't have a full...
Major culture shock.
He didn't... Well, not entirely. Culture shock, yeah, that's one thing. But he was an American, so he knew what America was like. But he had to have access to what was taking place in the church, Vatican II and the rest of it. So when he came back in 75, he was still within the Rochester, New York diocese. He functioned as a priest, but he read for 2 years. Then he made a decision. He said, I can no longer be a part of this. He walked away from his Franciscan community, and he walked away from the diocese, not knowing what he was going to do, where he was going to live. You know what he did? He lived in the home he grew up in Rochester, for the next few years. He had nowhere else to go. He understood at that point he could no longer be a part of it, because he understood that he was not going to be able to fight. You see, the fight for a layman and the fight for a clergyman is similar but not the same. Because I'm going to go back to myself here in the Lubbock Diocese. Do you think the local bishop is going to give me permission to do what I'm doing? No, he's not. He's going to kick me out. He's not going to allow me to function if I try to place myself under him. He would probably excommunicate me. Okay? But we've already been down that road as a community. This is a case of seen it, done it. We don't recognize their so-called authority because heretics no longer have authority. You have to understand it canonically. You have to understand it theologically. They have no authority. They think they do, but they have no authority whatsoever. If you recognize your authority, you recognize that you condone their heresy. You cannot condone their heresy. I would not be able to function in any diocese in this country.
Then you incur the punishment of the heretic if you support them and stay with them.
Yeah. And the punishment would be they'd either shut you down completely, which is what they really really do. And I'm not going to call it irony. The tragedy, I'm going to call it tragedy. The tragedy of it all, Eddie, is this. You look at what I do, the Mass that I say, the sacraments that I administer, the sermons that I've given and continue to give. I'm no different than a priest from 1958 or 1960. No different. So who's changed? And if there's been change, who's right and who's wrong? I know where I stand. That's why I'm firm. I don't give. Not because I'm stubborn, not because I'm proud, not because I'm arrogant, because I do what the Church has said I must do. I must do. That's why I don't budge. And for that, I'm condemned. For that, I'm looked upon as being outside the Church. And it doesn't matter if it's the local diocese or family. If that's the position that they take, I know they're wrong. I know they're wrong. Because let's look at it this way. Right now, in 2023, which church has the heretics? Which church has the homosexuals? Which church has the pedophiles? I could take it further, but you get the idea. That tells you right there who's right and who's wrong. And when I say homosexuals and pedophiles, they openly allow it. They don't try to stop it. And the heresy is the worst thing. The heresy, from top to bottom. Literally from top to bottom. Does that mean that every clergyman promotes heresy? Probably not. But they continue to associate with the heretics, with the modernists. They don't make an attempt to leave, which by association, and this is church law, by association, they're heretics. That's why we have done what we've done. In the eyes of the world, in the eyes of these modernists, if we're condemned, so be it. Because we look at it this way. How can a heretic excommunicate? He can't. Because he himself is outside the Church. He has no authority to excommunicate. If that means that the vast majority of the Catholics in the Lubbock Diocese and elsewhere condemn us, so be it. So be it. Because we know what the Church has given us for 19 and a half centuries. Why do you think, and I'm Exhibit A here, because I was in the Catholic parochial system in the 60s. Okay? I spent 9 years in the Catholic system, in the elementary school. Okay? First 3 years, you had Baltimore Catechism. Come back from summer vacation in my 4th grade, you get a totally different books. Totally different books. And, it took me a while to figure this out. But think about this. We were told back in the 60s, the Church is going to make a few changes in the Mass. Okay? They're liars. They lied from the beginning. And why do I say this? Because you can't change religion books over the summer. These books had to be printed a year, 2 years prior. They were just waiting for the time when they were going to bring them in. Okay? You can't publish and distribute these religion books that quickly. So they already knew what they were going to do. It's just a matter of when they were going to do it. So when I came back in the 4th grade, and we had all these Sadler series books, which were a whole lot of garbage, and that's all I got from the 4th through the 9th grade. The 9th grade, Catholic Boys High School. St. Xavier High School in Louisville, Kentucky. The academics were off the wall. I mean, they were really good. But the religion, they were already preaching secular humanism and heresy. I got the same religion course that my older brother got it 6 years previous. Then, as a result of that, I was the first one in my family. I'm the 7th of 10 children. I was the first one to go to public school. It was unheard of in those days. For good Catholic parents, they were going to send them to the public schools. They were going to send them to the Catholic schools. But my point is this. They were already planning the destruction of the Catholic school system well before. It had to be before Vatican II. Vatican II gave them legal license. Because in the 4th grade, give me a moment here. 4th grade, let's see, I was born in 57. 4th grade would have been 910. It would have been about 1966. Okay? Terry, you can verify because you're the same age as me. It was around 1966 you entered the 4th grade. Okay? Vatican II ended in 65. It didn't happen that fast. They already knew what they were going to do. Either during or before Vatican II, they already knew what they were going to do. Okay?
Yeah.
You break down the education system, and they did it very well. So to the point to where after a few years, these Catholic children didn't know the faith anymore because they were not being taught it. And now, after all these years, you've got 2 or 3 generations of Catholics who are my age and younger. I'm 65. They don't know the faith. That's what we figured this out some years ago. They dumb down the Catholics, make them ignorant of the faith. They don't know what to defend. They know little or nothing about the faith. That's why they can control them. And for the ones who stayed behind, and after so many years, you've got tens of millions of Catholics in this country alone who have walked away. They didn't know the faith. They were gullible. They were naive. They took the bait from the Protestants, or they just lost the faith entirely. And many of them did just that. So
because if they knew the faith, they wouldn't be blind, Father, and they could see the heresy.
Yeah.
They have to cover it up by having the people be ignorant. Then if the people are ignorant, then they can make them into useful idiots.
Yeah. I had the blessing of having 2 parents who were outspoken. My father more so than my mother, but still, it was a situation where my father, God bless him and God rest his soul, he had a 6th grade education. But he hated what was going on at that time. He had what I call a Catholic sixth sense. He didn't like it. He knew it was wrong. And he was powerless to do anything about it. And so, that's why the younger members among my siblings, we went to public schools. Because
he may have had a sixth sense, but he knew the faith too, I bet, Father.
In a very simple way, he did know the faith. Okay? And he read. To his credit, he did a lot of reading. And as a result, he walked away from the Novus Ordo in 1972. The Novus Ordo officially only began in 70.
Yeah.
He walked away in 72. My mother in 73. Okay? And they didn't neither one of them, even until the day that they died, neither one had a full and complete understanding of what was taking place. My saving grace, first was them, secondly was in the seminary. That's when things, our understanding really expanded as to what was taking place. For ourselves, and I'm going to specify this, our community, because our community has been accused of being schismatic and being outside the church. And we have said from day one, oh no, oh no. We haven't left the church has left us. The bark of Peter, and you have to look at it this way, Eddie. It's the difference between the institution that Christ gave us and the rest of it. We're still within the institution of the church. We're on the bark. Okay? It's the vast majority of other Catholics. I'm not going to talk about this in an absolute way.
What?
But the vast majority of Catholics, clergy and laity alike, have actually left the bark and don't realize it. They may not have had the intention to leave the bark, in other words, the institution, but by the very fact of what they have done, by their stubbornness and staying behind, their ignorance, their naivete, their lack of understanding of the faith, they have remained in these churches, and the clergy, pardon me, just a minute. The clergy, they're the ones that are guilty. They have led the sheep off with the bark, outside the institution. They have gone with the laity for different reasons, but it all comes back to, it doesn't matter for what reason you leave the church. Once you've left it, you've left it. Doesn't mean you can't come back. It means that you're actually outside the church, even though you think you're in. That's the problem that you have today. You know, if I use the Lubbock Diocese again, you've got a man here, Robert Corvair. He's considered the Catholic Bishop of Lubbock. The man's a heretic. He's outside the church. He would laugh at the idea. He would mock the idea. And probably would become very angry. The Catholics who go to these churches in the Lubbock Diocese, they're no longer Catholic, even though many, if not most, they want to be Catholic. But because they are modernist, they have accepted heresy and everything that goes along with it. We're not talking about just the Mass. The Mass is the public symbol here. But if you question these Catholics and go down the line of doctrine, I can assure you they're not going to accept all the doctrine.
No.
That means they're no longer Catholic. How many, and I usually start with this one. How many are going to accept there's no salvation outside the church? Because of the false ecumenism that they have been fed for 60 years, the vast majority of Catholics will no longer accept that doctrine. You know, first of all, you have to explain it. And because many will think that that dogma says that if you're not Catholic in name, you're going to hell. The dogma's never said that. The dogma states that it is only through the Catholic Church you will receive the grace for salvation. In other words, the Baptists don't have the grace for salvation. The Church of Christ don't have the grace for salvation. The Episcopalians, the Lutherans, none of them have the grace of salvation. Why? Christ gave us one church, the Roman Catholic Church. It is only through that church that you can receive the grace to be able to go to heaven. That's what the dogma means. How many Catholics today are going to accept that? Because they've been lied to. And this heretic in Rome, Jorge Bergoglio, is perhaps the worst promoter of this heresy we've ever seen in Rome. To be sure, Ratzinger, John Paul II, they all promoted it. This man is probably the worst of them all. He will tell you flat to his face you don't have to be Catholic in order to go to heaven. He has said it public. I've seen it. He condemns Catholics who think that, you know, the dogma, the essence of the dogma, he condemns. So we go back to where we started. Who's Catholic and who's not? who's still in the church and who's not. And you'll have these people who don't think very deeply, who will say, you're saying that 1 billion Catholics are wrong? And I'm saying yes. That's the great apostasy. It sounds like it's too, what I'm saying is just too far out. And the vast majority of Catholics will say, you're too far out. All of my family will say that. I don't care. I really don't. I mean, I care, but what I'm saying is their thought, their opinion is wrong. That's what I mean by that. I'm not indifferent at all. You can anybody who's listening right now who will tell you that. I'm not indifferent at all. You know. You okay, Eddie?
Yeah, but
is that Eddie? Is that Eddie or is that Terry coughing? Go ahead, Eddie.
I don't think they really want to be Catholic, though, like you said. If they wanted to be Catholic, they'd want to really learn the Catholic catechism. They'd really want to know the faith. And then you may have to do it on your own. And I did. And then once you learn it, you start seeing. And I was going to these Novus Ordo churches, and I was like, what are they saying? This social justice stuff that they started getting into? I was like, no, this is wrong. This is about the people. This ain't about God. And it started getting off. They got out of their lane so bad, I was like, I can't be a part of this anymore, because I started learning the Catholic faith. And these people, I don't know if they truly want to be Catholic. But that's exactly why I'm not in the Novus Ordo, is because I want to be Catholic, and they're not Catholic.
Eddie, you're exactly right. You are correct. Okay? That the vast majority of them, they have been so brainwashed, or they are so ignorant that, and they have been told, they have been taught a religion other than Catholicism, although it's been called Catholicism. That you're right, the vast majority no longer want to be. I'm not going to say all of them, because I've listened to some of them, and I can tell, yeah, they want to be Catholic. The problem, they're in the wrong church. They think they're in the right church. It's a little bit like, maybe I should say it's a whole lot like what the English went through and the Germans went through, the Europeans went through in the 16th century. How many of those Catholics who actually left the church actually wanted to remain Catholic? Especially in England. England, where do they have to go? They live on an island, okay? There probably were some that left England because of what was taking place. I can't believe that there weren't any that left the island because they saw what was taking place. But you had one faithful bishop, Bishop Thomas Fisher. Yeah. You know, and Thomas More is symbolic of what was probably a small number of lay Catholics who remained faithful and who were willing to go and be beheaded rather than compromise. So what you have a similar situation today. The only difference is you're not being beheaded. You're not losing. You're not being executed because you don't accept it. The difference is we're going through a spiritual martyrdom rather than a physical martyrdom.
For now.
Yeah. Okay. You know, whether we'll have to go through the physical martyrdom is, yes, it's true to be seen, but that means that the state would have to get involved. But the point is this, that anybody who truly wants to be Catholic, you can't be a part of the new church, the Novus Ordo Church. And the vast majority still are, and probably always will be. And that's why you've got those who want to be Catholic, okay, And I'm gonna enlarge this a little bit. I don't normally like doing this. Those traditional Catholics, okay, go to a Latin Mass, etc., etc. I mean, I'm really going beyond what I'd like to go beyond because there are problems there. But this is just a small number of Catholics. Even worldwide, it's a very small number of Catholics. And you've got a situation where they walked out. They understood they could no longer be a part of these local churches. Our church, our parish here in Lubbock, has tripled since the beginning of COVID. I don't want to give numbers out over the air, but we've tripled in size. That's during a time when you would least expect it to happen. And that's precisely when it has happened. And we continue to grow. We got kids everywhere, babies, a lot of babies.
We were one of the few churches that didn't shut down through COVID.
We were the only.
No, that's good.
We were the only Catholic church in West Texas, including the Modernists here, that remained open during COVID. And
I think across the nation, Father.
No, I wouldn't say across the nation. I know that there were some traditional churches that remained open. I don't know how many. But I know there weren't many. I know there were some traditional churches that were forced to close. You know, we live in a state, Texas, where the governor, God bless him, Governor Abbott, he came out public and said, it was never my intention to close churches. There were a few other states that took that position. The governors did. So we were blessed in that way. You know, and so, you know, we didn't have to close. I'm not going to say that the majority of that growth is due to that, but I know part of it was. But most of the growth was due to the fact of they saw what was happening in Rome. They no longer could tolerate it. And they could no longer tolerate what was taking place in their parish churches. So it was really a combination of things coming together, climaxing, which has brought about our growth. And I don't think we're finished. I don't think we're anywhere close to being finished. You know, the hope and prayer through this program. You know, I started this program over 14 years ago with the idea of talking about Catholicism and condemning these modernists with the hope that we would have people locally who would want to come to Corpus Christi. There are a few, you know, but, you know, I know that the program still serves a good purpose. And as long as God allows it, we'll continue.